Take it off." The crown prince twirled the dagger in his hand, his gaze fixed on me, his personal head eunuch. "Your Highness, this is against the rules." I clutched my waistband, trembling all over. "I suspect you're an assassin, a body check." I gritted my teeth and pulled out the jar of pickled radishes I'd prepared long ago. "Your Highness, look, this is this slave's manhood." The moment I opened it, a pitch-black radish strip lay clearly inside the jar. The crown prince's expression shifted from cold sternness to indescribable. "How did it end up like this?" "Me, yeah, just like yours. That pickled radish saved my life. It all happened 3 months ago. That freak Xiao Yang had insisted on the body check, and I'd come this close to losing my head. Luckily, that shriveled radish strip, dried for 3 years, had fooled him completely." Xiao Yang believed it. Not only that, he developed a strange sort of pity for me, probably in his eyes. I'd lost all manly dignity, and there was no point in living anymore, and so, I, Song Xiaobao, had firmly secured my position as the director of the Eastern Depot, becoming the veritable 9,000-year-old, second only to the emperor, above all others in the land. Sounds mighty impressive, doesn't it? In reality, I'm nothing more than a mad dog raised by Xiao Yang. He points, and I bite. The entire court curses me as a treacherous eunuch who ruins the country. Longing to tear me to shreds and drink my blood, I couldn't care less. As long as I can clear the Song family's name, I'd be a dog for him, even a tortoise. Just as long as Xiao Yang never finds out I'm a woman. It was the 15th day of the month, a full moon night, also the day of each month when I wanted to die the most. My period had come right on time. My body, trained in the virgin boys' martial arts, had long been permeated with cold. When my period hit, the pain in my stomach was like 10 battering rams slamming their heads against a city gate, agonizingly painful. I'd sent all the servants away early, wrapping myself up like a silkworm chrysalis. I huddled on the cold jade bed in the secret chamber, playing dead. I clutched a golden Nanmu jar tightly to my chest. Inside lay my lucky charm. I was terrified Xiao Yang would spring another surprise on me like he did last time. If he did, I'd truly end up with no grave to rest in. I was drifting in and out of consciousness from the pain. The door to the secret chamber crashed open with a bang. There was only one person in the entire world bold enough to break in at this hour. Xiao Yang. Was this man insane? It's the middle of the night. What's he doing in a eunuch's quarters? Song Xiaobao. Footsteps drew near, steady and powerful, each one striking my frayed nerves. I wanted to ignore him, but the scent on him was overwhelming. Alcohol, mixed with dragon's saliva incense. And the cold, sharp tang of someone steeped in power and intrigue for years. It smelled good, I'll admit, just a little suffocating. Playing dead, a large hand tore the quilt off me without mercy. Cold air rushed in. I jolted awake, forced to open my eyes. Xiao Yang stood by the bed, looking down at me from above. His robe collar was unfastened, bearing a broad expanse of pale, cold chest. His hair was unbound, falling in a messy cascade over his shoulders. He looked a little decadent, and a little sexy. This man was devastatingly handsome. A shame he had to open his mouth, too. Your Highness, I forced the words out through gritted teeth, my voice as weak as a newborn kitten that had just been weaned. This slave is unwell. Xiao Yang raised an eyebrow, his gaze roamed over my deathly pale face, finally coming to rest on the jar in my arms. What, missing that thing of yours again? Me? Could I tell him I had menstrual cramps? No, if I did, it'd be high treason and a swift beheading. I took a deep breath and decided to go with the flow. Yes, my eyes reddened. I hugged the pickled radish jar even tighter, my fingers trembling. Every full moon, the yin energy is heavy, and the wound where I was cut aches bitterly. The imperial physician calls it phantom limb pain. This slave's heart is filled with sorrow. I can only hold this jar to find a little comfort. I spoke the lie with such heartfelt emotion, I almost believed it myself. Xiao Yang fell silent. He stared at the jar, his eyes growing complicated. He was probably thinking back to 3 months ago, to the pitiful sight of that small and black thing he'd seen. Disgust mixed with a hint of sympathy tinged with a touch of revulsion. Pathetic. He scoffed and sat down heavily on the edge of my bed. The mattress sank under his weight. I shrank back in fear. Your Highness, this slave is covered in bad luck. Shut up. He shot me a glare. Then, he did something that nearly killed me on the spot. He held out his hand, a warm, large palm pressed against my lower abdomen through the thin inner garment. Does it hurt here? I fell silent. I froze. I went rigid as a coffin board. His palm was big and burning hot, calloused, the way only a warrior's hand could be, pressed against my icy stomach. A steady stream of warmth seeped in. I won't lie, it felt nice, better than a heating pad. But alarm bells were blaring in my head. This spot, a little lower, and he'd find my secret, a little higher. And he'd feel my chest binding. 3. Your Highness. My voice shook. This is against the rules. In front of me. You dare talk about rules. Xiaoyang didn't move, even pressing down a little maliciously. I couldn't hold back a whimper. That press had hit the worst of the pain, agonizing yet oddly relieving. Xiaoyang's eyes narrowed, his gaze darkening in an instant. Song Xiaobao. He leaned in, his breath fanning my ear, thick with the stench of alcohol. Why does your whimper sound like a woman's? My heart stopped beating. Your Highness jokes. I bit down on my tongue, forcing myself to stay calm. A eunuch is neither man nor woman. A high, thin voice is only natural, is it? Xiaoyang didn't dwell on the question, but he didn't move his hand either. Instead, as if he'd discovered a new continent, the pad of his thumb stroked my stomach gently. Once, twice, I never noticed this before. His voice was low and husky. Your waist, it's rather soft. My palms broke out in a cold sweat, my fingers white-knuckled as I clung to the pickled radish jar. If he lifted my clothes now, he'd see not just a soft waist, but 3 thick layers of white cloth binding my chest. I was just about to grab the jar, smash it over his head, and run for my life, when he suddenly pulled his hand away. That's enough. Xiaoyang stood up, straightened his robe, and wiped his hand in disgust, covered in cold sweat. Reeks. If you treasure that dried radish of yours so much, I'll have the craftsman plate it with gold later, save you from throwing a fit if it molds one day. With that, he picked up his wine pot and stumbled out the door. He paused at the threshold. No need to attend court tomorrow. Rest at home and nurse your phantom limb. The door clicked shut. I collapsed onto the bed, gasping for air as if I'd just been pulled from the water. I stared at the jar in my arms, then touched the spot where he'd pressed. His body heat still lingered there, burning hot. I cursed under my breath. Xiaoyang, you bastard, plate it with gold. Who the hell comes up with this stuff? If this pickled radish gets a gold plating, how the hell am I supposed to face the other eunuchs from now on? 4. That old witch in the palace was causing trouble again, probably thinking Xiaoyang's position as crown prince was too secure. She just had to stir up trouble in his harem. First thing in the morning, 12 beautiful women were sent to the crown prince's mansion, each one a beauty in her own right, some plump, some slender, all exquisite, waists so thin they looked like they'd snap with a single squeeze, chests that, TSK, I bowed my head and stared at my own chest. Flattened to a set of ribs by the binding cloth, my mood was complicated, a little envious, a little sorry for them. Why send them to anyone but Xiaoyang? The air in the study was thick with tension. Xiaoyang sat in the Grand Master's chair, twirling a blood-stained dagger in his hand. The blade glinted with a cold, sharp light. The row of beautiful women knelt on the ground, trembling like quails waiting to be slaughtered. The cloying scent of powder and perfume hung in the air, a little sickening. Achoo! I couldn't hold back a sneeze. Xiaoyang lifted his eyelids, shooting me a cold glance. Feeling better, thanks to your Highness's blessing. I quickly broke into a sycophantic smile, scurrying over to pour him a cup of tea. That place doesn't hurt anymore either. Xiaoyang let out a low, mocking hum. Not bothering to call me out on my lie, his gaze returned to the women, the dagger spinning nimbly between his fingers. Song Xiaobao, this slave is here, pick one. My hand slipped, nearly spilling the tea. I jerked my head up, straight into his bottomless eyes. I quickly averted my gaze. See no evil, your Highness is joking. I forced a dry laugh. This slave is a broken man. What would I do with a beauty? Put her on a shelf as an ornament. Can a broken man not look? He tossed the dagger onto the table with a clatter. The sound made all the women jump, tears welling up in some of their eyes, since the Empress Dowager has shown such kindness. I cannot refuse all of them. He stood up and walked step by step towards me. The overwhelming pressure of a man descended on me. I held my breath instinctively. This man always smelled of something, not powder or perfume, ink, cold iron, and a faint hint of peppermint. It smelled good, if it wasn't so deadly. Pick one. Take her back to your mansion. He bent his head, his gaze locking onto mine as if he wanted to see straight into my soul. Or, you can take them all for me. 5. A cold sweat broke out on my back in an instant. This was a test. It was definitely a test. That pickled radish had fooled his eyes, but he still doubted me. If I chose one, it'd prove I still had a taste for beauty, that my heart was not pure. In the eyes of this madman, a eunuch with an impure heart was nothing but a troublemaker, better off dead. I dropped to my knees with a thud. My knees slammed into the brick floor, the pain making me grit my teeth. Spare me, Your Highness. When this slave looks at these women, my heart is filled only with inferiority. I squeezed out 2 crocodile tears. This slave's body is maimed and incomplete. When I see such beautiful women, I feel no desire to admire them, only that I am even more worthless than dirt. And I stole a glance at him, laying it on thicker. In this slave's eyes, these vulgar beauties are not even worth a single hair on Your Highness's head. Looking at them is not half as pleasing as looking at Your Highness. Dead silence. The beautiful women kneeling on the ground stared at me in terror. It was as if they were staring at a complete pervert. Xiao Yang froze for a moment too. Clearly, he'd been caught off guard by my bold straight shot. After a long moment, the corner of his mouth twitched. Song Xiaobao, your skill at being nauseating is really getting better and better. 6. The beautiful women were sent back. Their cries were shut out the door along with them. Only he and I remained in the study. The silence hung thick and awkward in the air. Xiao Yang didn't return to his seat. Instead, he circled me twice. Since beautiful women don't interest you, he reached into his arms and pulled out a booklet, flinging it straight into my chest. What about this? I fumbled to catch it. The cover was plain blue, no words, looking rather proper. I flipped to the first page. Whoa, holy hell. 2 naked figures were tangled together in an embrace. The brushwork was exquisite, every detail vivid, even their expressions drawn to perfection. A sex manual, a Palace Collection edition, no less. I closed it with a blank face. This painter was terrible. They'd even gotten the human anatomy wrong. That pose would break someone's legs, wouldn't it? Well, Xiao Yang leaned in, his handsome face magnified in front of mine. His eyelashes were long, each one distinct, exquisite brushwork, and the meaning is profound. I spouted nonsense with a straight face. No reaction after seeing it. His gaze swept unashamedly downward, fixing on the area below my waist. I clamped my legs shut, tensing up instantly. Your Highness. I pulled a miserable face, my voice dripping with woe. Please stop making fun of this slave. It's just a lump of dead flesh. Even a god couldn't do anything with it. Xiao Yang narrowed his eyes. He clearly didn't believe me. Suddenly, he reached out and grabbed my collar, yanking me forward. Our noses were almost touching, our breaths mingling. My mind went blank. This distance was far too close, close enough that I could see my own cowardly reflection in his pupils. Song Xiaobao, why do I get the feeling you've been acting this whole time? His voice was low, hoarse, laced with a dangerous hook. When eunuchs enter the palace, they all pickle that thing in a jar and carry it with them for inspection. His finger hooked around my waistband, flicking it lightly. Where's yours? 7. I knew this day would come. Thankfully, I'd been prepared. Xiao Yang was so suspicious, he'd never let me off easy. I tremblingly reached into my arms, even with the prop ready. If he saw it was a radish this time, it'd be high treason, and a swift beheading. It's right here. I pulled out a small golden Nanmu jar, exquisitely crafted, carved with dragons and phoenixes. This jar alone had cost me 3 months' salary. Xiao Yang let go of my waistband and took the jar. His hand sinking slightly with its weight, he raised an eyebrow, seemingly surprised that I really did carry it with me. Open it. The order was short, unquestionable. I took a deep breath and twisted open the lid slowly. A stale, salty stench, mixed with preservative spices, wafted out, a little pungent. Xiao Yang frowned, but didn't pull away. He leaned down to look. At the bottom of the jar lay a small object, pitch black, shriveled, curled into a tiny strip. It was a finger radish I'd had the Imperial chef pickle with a secret sauce 3 years prior, air-dried for 3 years. It no longer looked the least bit like a radish. It really did look like that thing, after being dried out, a pitiful sight. Xiao Yang stared at it for a full half a cup of tea's time. Dead silence reigned in the study. I didn't dare breathe a word, my back soaked through with sweat, the fabric sticking clammily to my skin. Stare all you want if you like it so much. I'll put this precious jar by your bed for you to look at every day. Wait a minute, what the hell was he looking at? Did he see the radish texture? Impossible, the Imperial chef's skills were a family secret. Just as I was about to pass out from lack of oxygen, click, the lid snapped shut. Why, his Adam's apple bobbed once. As if he was searching for the right words. Why, is it so shrunken compared to last time? I wanted to laugh my head off, but I forced my face to stay calm. Your Highness, it's been years, and I haven't taken good care of it. It shrank. Xiao Yang fell silent. He stuffed the jar back into my hands, his movements surprisingly careful, as if afraid of breaking the radish strip. I suppose so, he sighed, raising his hand to pat my shoulder. The force was light, his palm burning hot. Through the fabric, it seared my shoulder, making it tingle. You've had a hard life. His voice was soft for once, no longer sharp and aggressive. I have some preservative oil from the western regions as a tribute. I'll tell Li Fuchuan to send it to you later. Put plenty on it, don't let it disappear completely. Thank you for your great kindness, Your Highness, but I really don't want to put oil on a radish. All right, you may leave. He waved his hand, looking rather listless. It seemed my miserable state had amused him greatly, finally laying his suspicious heart to rest. I felt like I'd been granted a reprieve, clutching my radish jar and scrambling out as fast as I could. Just as I reached the door, his faint voice drifted from behind me. Song Xiaobao, my foot slipped, and I nearly face-planted on the ground. Why, Your Highness, what else do you command? Xiao Yang sat in the shadows, his fingertips tapping the table lightly. Since you're a real eunuch, then stay and attend to my bath tonight. My hands tightened around the jar, freezing in place. What new kink was this? 8. I regretted it, truly. I never should have taken that pickled radish out. If I hadn't, it would have just been high treason, a quick, painless beheading. Now, the Crown Prince's sympathy had overflowed, and he insisted I go to the Imperial Pond to attend to his bath, calling it, "Come in and soak too. It's a medicinal bath, good for your broken body, good for nothing." I was wearing a chest binder, one soak, and everything would be exposed. By then, it wouldn't just be my broken body, I'd be reduced to a pile of ash. Mist swirled, water splashed. The pond was absurdly large, with white jade beast heads crouching at each corner, spouting hot water from their mouths. Extravagant, corrupt, the evils of feudal rule. Xiao Yang was submerged in the water, his back to me. His long hair clung wetly to his back, black hair against pale skin. Water droplets slid down the groove of his spine, finally disappearing into his lean waist dimple. I had to admit, this bastard prince had an incredible body, broad shoulders, narrow waist, his muscle lines smooth as a martial artist's. No wonder he was a ruthless man who could make the entire court wet their pants. I looked once, then again, then I silently recited the heart-cleansing mantra 100 times in my heart. "What are you standing there for?" Xiao Yang's voice echoed, sounding lazy. "Get in." I stood at the edge of the pond, clutching my collar tightly closed. "Your Highness, this slave won't get in." "Why not?" He turned his head, half his profile hidden in the mist, but his gaze was sharp as a blade. This slave has been weak since childhood, can't stand the wind, nor the damp." I made up an excuse on the spot. "And this slave has an old man's stench, afraid of offending Your Highness." Xiao Yang scoffed. "Song Xiaobao, you sure have a lot of excuses." He stood up with a splash, water droplets rolling down his pectoral muscles. I quickly closed my eyes. See no evil, it'll give you pink eye. If you won't get in, then come over and scrub my back. 9. This request was reasonable. As a eunuch, I was a servant meant to wait on others. I couldn't refuse. I had to bite the bullet and shuffle over, kneeling at the edge of the pond with a loofah in my hand. Your Highness, say the word if my strength is too much. I leaned back as far as I could, stretching only my arm out to reach his back. Like a toad with overdeveloped front limbs, Xiao Yang propped himself on the edge of the pond, his eyes closed, looking utterly relaxed. Didn't you eat? Put more force into it. I gritted my teeth. Endure it, for the Song family, for clearing our name, for my life. I'll scrub you like a washboard. Beneath my hands was warm, firm skin, the texture, damnably nice. I scrubbed as I silently stuck pins into a voodoo doll of him in my heart. Scrub you to death. Scrub you to death, Song Xiaobao. He spoke suddenly, his voice a little hoarse. Why do your hands feel like a woman's? My hand slipped, the loofah nearly falling into the water. Your Highness is joking, I explained stiffly. Though this slave's body is incomplete, these hands have held a knife for years. Is that so? Xiao Yang suddenly grabbed my wrist with his back hand. Fast, accurate, ruthless, like a steel vice. His warm, damp palm pressed against my pulse point, making me jolt. Then why are you shaking? He yanked hard, my balance lost. I lurched forward. I was about to fall into the water, turning into a drowned rat. I was scared out of my wits. Once I fell in, my chest binder would get soaked, my clothes sticking to my body. It'd be an execution on the spot, in the nick of time. My other hand clawed desperately at the white jade brick edge of the pond, my nails nearly splitting, barely steadying myself, but my upper body still tilted forward inevitably. Almost pressing against Xiao Yang's face, our breaths mingled, close enough to touch. 9. Xiao Yang seemed just as surprised by my extreme reaction. He froze for a moment, his other hand instinctively wrapping around my waist to steady me. That one touch sealed my fate. It was summer, though I was dressed thickly. The fabric wasn't heavy, my chest binder was tight, making my waist extremely slim and soft. It was the unique softness and resilience of a woman's waist, nothing like a man's. Xiao Yang's palm pressed against my waist, and froze. In that instant, time seemed to stand still, only the sound of water droplets falling into the pond remained. Drip, drip. Xiao Yang slowly lifted his eyes, the laziness in his gaze was gone, replaced by a heart-stopping curiosity, and a hint of disbelief. Song Xiaobao, his thumb stroked my waist lightly through the fabric. I felt like I'd been branded by a red-hot iron. What eunuch has a waist this soft? 10. Danger, extreme danger. This was a death question. Explain. How? Say I was born with a rare bone structure. Say I'd learned bone shrinking skills. Xiao Yang wasn't an idiot. His hand had already started to tighten, even trying to slide upward, 1 inch higher, and he'd touch my chest. Bound so tight it left me breathless. Once he did, my mind went completely blank. In that moment, the will to survive triumphed over reason, over hierarchy, over the fact that he was the crown prince and I was his dog. I gritted my teeth and squeezed my eyes shut, lifting my foot. I aimed a fierce kick at the shoulder next to Xiao Yang's incomparably handsome face. Assassin! I tore my throat open with a scream. That kick held every ounce of strength I had. Xiao Yang was completely unprepared. He'd been lost in the confusion of why is this eunuch's waist so soft. When my foot slammed into his shoulder, splash, a huge spray of water erupted. The mighty crown prince, the future emperor of the realm, kicked into the water by his own personal eunuch, even choking on a mouthful of it, before he could surface. I scrambled to my feet, clutching my waist, and bolted out like a frightened rabbit, not daring to look back. I shouted as I ran, "Help, assassin! His Highness is under attack. Protect the crown prince, hurry!" Behind me, a roar of fury mixed with coughs came from the imperial pond. Song, XAO, BAO, get back here 4ME, go back. Only a fool would go back. Going back meant death. I ran out of the East Palace in one breath, leaning against a wall, gasping for air, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst out of my throat. My waist burned, as if his palm's warmth still lingered there. I was done for. Truly done for this time, I'd kicked the crown prince. And he'd touched my waist, my head as the lord of 9,000 years was surely hanging by a thread. But, I stared down at my hand, that kick I'd landed on him earlier, the feel of it under my foot, it had been surprisingly good. 11, I survived, thanks to a face thicker than city walls, and a tongue that could turn black into white. I insisted there had been a water ghost in the imperial pond, a lecherous water ghost, trying to grope the crown prince's rear. I'd had no choice but to take extreme measures to protect him. When Xiaoyang heard this, his face turned as black as a pot's bottom. He didn't believe me, but he didn't kill me either. It was just that his gaze on me grew even stranger, the kind of look you give someone who's brain dead, yet somehow absurdly loyal. But I knew the real reason he hadn't exploded. It still boiled down to that waist. These past few days, every time he saw my waist, his eyes would linger there for an inexplicable 3 seconds, then dart away quickly, the tips of his ears flushing a suspicious red. TSK, this bastard prince, his thoughts are anything but pure. 12, half a month later, the imperial autumn hunt, as the lord of 9,000 years, the crown prince's closest companion, I naturally had to accompany him. I have to admit, the eunuch's uniform altered into riding gear actually looked pretty sharp on me. If you ignored the chest binder squeezing the life out of me, that is, on the hunting grounds, banners blotted out the sun. Xiaoyang rode a black steed with white hooves, clad in a black tight-fitting martial robe, his cuffs tied tight, his long hair bound high on his head. He looked as crisp and deadly as a drawn blade, handsome as sin, and equally arrogant. Wherever he passed, silk handkerchiefs from noble young ladies rained down on him, but he didn't spare them a single glance. Riding straight over the scattered cloth, truly single by choice, Song Xiaobao, he turned his head, pointing a horsewhip at me. Keep up, if you get lost and eaten by wolves, I won't save you. I rolled my eyes behind his back, but put on an obsequious smile for his benefit. Your Highness, rest assured, even if this slave dies, I'll die by your side. I never thought those words would end up being a prophecy. 13, deep in the forest, disaster struck without warning, would come to hunt foxes. But instead stumbled upon a band of black-cloaked men, 24 assassins, each with extraordinary martial skills, all charging straight for Xiaoyang's head. Protect the crown prince, I shouted until my throat was raw, but the imperial guards had been scattered, and the air was filled with the flash of blades and swords. Xiaoyang, however, remained calm. He drew his sword and sliced off an assassin's head with a single backhand stroke. Fresh blood splattered across his face, making his peach blossom eyes look even more seductive and bloodthirsty. In that moment, he was not the drowned rat I'd kicked into the water in the imperial pond. He was the god of war of the great Liang dynasty, killing men as easily as cutting vegetables. I stared in a daze for a split second, then snapped back to my senses. Run, I'm a eunuch. This level of fight is way above my pay grade. I was just about to wheel my horse around and hide in the underbrush, when a flash of cold steel caught the corner of my eye. Behind Xiaoyang, a black-cloaked man hung upside down from a tree, a short sword stabbing straight for Xiaoyang's heart, and Xiaoyang, entangled with 3 assassins, had no time to spare for the sneak attack. In that instant, my mind went blank, but my body moved faster than my thoughts. If I didn't save him, he'd die. Without him, I'd lose my protector. The Song family's name would never be cleared, and I'd end up buried with him too. The pros and cons flashed through my mind in a thousandth of a second. I gritted my teeth, leaping off my horse and throwing myself forward, using my not-so-broad back to block the short sword. Squelch. 14. Agony exploded from my shoulder. I let out a muffled groan, my vision blacking out as I fell off the horse. But I didn't hit the ground. A pair of arms, reeking of blood and dragon's saliva incense, caught me. Song Xiaobao, Xiaoyang's voice cracked, tinged with an imperceptible tremor. He drove his sword straight through the sneaker's throat, then held me tight, so tight it felt like he'd squeezed the life out of me. Are you insane? He roared at me, his eyes bloodshot with rage. Your slave. Sweat poured down my face from the pain, my lips trembling uncontrollably. Your slave said, I'd die by your side. I'd overdone the hero act. It hurt like hell. The short sword had sliced through my shoulder, possibly even nicking the bone. Fresh blood gushed out, instantly soaking half my riding gear red. Xiaoyang stared at the blood on his hands, and his hands began to shake. "Don't move." His voice was hoarse beyond belief. "I'll stop the bleeding." With that, he ripped open his robe, roughly pouring a whole jar of golden sore medicine onto my wound. His movements were brutal, but he carefully avoided the uninjured patch of skin on my shoulder. "You fool," he cursed as he bandaged me up. "Who told you to block it? Did I ask you to save me? This life of yours is mine. No one allowed you to throw it away without my permission." His words were sharp and angry, but the arms holding me grew tighter and tighter, so tight I could barely breathe. His chin rested on the top of my head, and I could feel him shaking. "Your Highness." I leaned against his chest, breathing in the stench of blood on him. "This slave's life is worthless. If your Highness were gone, who would buy me radish jars?" Xiaoyang said nothing. Instead, he suddenly lowered his head, sinking his teeth hard into my uninjured shoulder. It was through the cloth, but I still felt the sharp pain. "Song Xiaobao." He ground his teeth in my ear, his voice cold and menacing. "You'd better pray you're a real eunuch, otherwise, I swear I'll make you." He didn't finish the sentence, but I could feel it. He was furious. I shrank my neck. This eunuch charade was really getting impossible to keep up. 17. I thought taking a sword for him would earn me a few days of paid leave, but ever since we returned from the hunting grounds, this crown prince had acted as if his soul had been possessed. He didn't approve memorials, didn't scold his ministers, and didn't go to the backyard to practice swordsmanship anymore. He lazed around in my room every single day, calling it supervision, making sure I was resting and healing my wound properly. In reality, I think he was monitoring me to see if I'd secretly reattached my radish. 18. Take your clothes off. Xiaoyang sat by the bed, holding a small green porcelain vial, the finest golden sore medicine from Western regions, a tribute. They said it could heal wounds without leaving a single scar. I huddled under the quilt, only my eyes peeking out, staring at him warily. "Your Highness, this menial task is better left to the imperial physician." Imperial physician. Xiaoyang let out a cold laugh. "Your bony frame would give even the imperial physician nightmares. I'd rather do it myself." "Me, excuses, all excuses. You just want to strip my clothes off." "Your Highness, really, it's unnecessary." I tried to struggle, but Xiaoyang's patience had run out. He reached out and tore the quilt off me in one swift motion. Too fast for me to even dodge. "Song Xiaobao." He leaned over me, his hands braced on either side of my body, his handsome face closing in with overwhelming pressure. "Are you going to take them off yourself, or do I have to tear them off for you?" His gaze fell on my bandaged shoulder, his eyes dark and unreadable, like a wolf closing in on its prey. I swallowed hard, remembering the ear-splitting sound of tearing cloth from the hunting grounds. This man would actually do it. "I'll do it myself." I surrendered, thankfully. The wound was on my shoulder near my arm otherwise. I really might not have been able to hide the truth. I tremblingly reached out to unbutton my collar. One button, two buttons. The front of my robe fell open, revealing my chest wrapped tight in thick white bandages, and at the edge of the bandages, a sliver of snow-white skin. Xiaoyang's Adam's apple bobbed once. It was obvious. I heard a swallow. Was he nervous? Or was he excited? I didn't dare think about it. I just closed my eyes, looking like I was marching to my death. "Your Highness, go easy." Xiaoyang said nothing. His cold fingertips lifted a corner of the bandage, his movements surprisingly gentle. Layer by layer, the bandage came off, revealing the gruesome wound beneath. The blade hadn't struck a vital spot, but the flesh was torn and raw, a frightening sight to behold. Xiaoyang's breathing grew heavier. His fingertips dipped into the ointment, dabbing it lightly around the wound's edge. A cool tingle seeped into my skin, sending a shiver down my spine. Hiss! I couldn't help but flinch. "Hurts." Xiaoyang's hand stilled. He looked up at me, those peach blossom eyes that always held a hint of mockery now brimming with an emotion I couldn't understand. "Endure it." He lowered his head, leaning close to the wound, and blew on it softly. Warm breath brushed my skin. It tickled, a numb, tingling sensation. Like an electric current shooting up my spine and straight to my skull. My mind exploded with a bang. My whole body went rigid, my toes curling tight into the bedsheets. This was Xiao Yang. The crown prince who killed without a second thought. He was actually blowing on my wound. The image was too surreal. I'd rather he'd stabbed me twice. 19. Why, your highness? My voice shook. Is it done? Impatient, Xiao Yang applied the ointment unhurriedly, his thumb brushing my collarbone intentionally or not. There was no wound there, yet he daubed it with the utmost care, not missing an inch of skin. That touch was pure torture. My face grew hot. My heart pounding so hard it felt like it would jump out of my throat. I was done for. This atmosphere was wrong. So terribly wrong. Xiao Yang's gaze darkened more and more. When he finished applying the ointment, he didn't leave at once. Instead, he stared at my collarbone for a long time. Song Xiaobao, he spoke suddenly, his voice hoarse beyond belief. Your body, why does it always smell so sweet? My heart skipped a beat. Sweet, had the powder finally worn off? Or had the sweat forced the scent out of my pores? It must be the pickled radish. I forced the lie out through gritted teeth. Xiao Yang, he looked up at me, a hint of amused indulgence in his eyes. Pickled radish. He suddenly leaned down, burying his nose in the crook of my neck, and took a deep breath. Warm lips brushed my skin, raising a trail of goosebumps. Then this radish, he murmured in my ear, his breath burning hot, is marinated surprisingly sweet. 20. Sweet, Xiao Yang. Have you lost your sense of taste, or has your brain short-circuited? You're calling a eunuch sweet. Are you bent? Are you actually bent? As my mind raced with a million frantic thoughts, Xiao Yang suddenly straightened up, pulling away. Heal well. He tugged the quilt up around me, his voice back to its usual coldness. But the flush on the tips of his ears betrayed him. When your wound heals, I'll take you somewhere nice. With that, he turned and left, his back a little flustered. As if fleeing for his life, I lay in bed, touching my still-burning neck, only one thought on my mind. Xiao Yang, you're finished, you're lusting after a eunuch, your life is ruined. But I never expected that the nice place he spoke of would be. 21. 3 days later, my wound had just scabbed over. Xiao Yang dragged me out of bed, packed me into a carriage, and after a bumpy ride, we finally stopped in front of a resplendent brothel, Wanhua Lu, the biggest den of extravagance in the capital. I stared at the gilded plaque, my jaw nearly hitting the ground. Your Highness, I clung to his sleeve, trembling. What are you doing? Bringing me here, for a team building? Xiao Yang turned his head, looking at me with a half-smile, a folding fan twirling in his hand, the picture of a handsome, dissolute nobleman. Wasn't it you who said you felt nothing for those vulgar women? He nodded at the row of elaborately made-up girls upstairs. Today, I'll see for myself, just what kind of stunning beauty it takes to make you, a useless eunuch, react. I saw through him. This man wasn't bringing me for team building. He was bringing me for desensitization therapy, and to verify, once and for all, if my little something still worked. Was this even human behavior? 22. The girls of Wanhua Lu were warm and eager. Unfortunately, Xiao Yang was even more eager. He booked the largest private room on the top floor, called for the 4 top courtesans, and told them to circle around me, while he sat in the Grandmaster's chair, sipping tea and staring at me with that "let's see how you act this time" look in his eyes. Eunuch Song, come here Tilda. Eunuch, your skin is so smooth, softer than mine Tilda. I couldn't handle 4 girls at once. The stench of powder and perfume made my head throb. I was squeezed in the middle, dodging left and right, all the while clutching my radish jar to my chest, terrified the vixens would smash it to pieces. Your Highness, I looked at him for help. This slave really can't. This slave is allergic to breasts. Xiao Yang let out a cold laugh. Allergic to breasts? I seem to remember you had plenty of strength when you kicked me into the water. Continue. He took a sip of tea. We stop when you react. Me, this was too much. Were you trying to drive a eunuch to death, or a radish? 23. Just as I was about to play dead and blackmail him, disaster struck. The incense burner in the private room suddenly emitted a wisp of sweet, cloying smoke. The smell was off, not ordinary agarwood. but laced with a heady musk that made one's blood run hot. Xiao Yang was a seasoned martial artist, his reflexes lightning fast. "Hold your breath," he shouted sharply, flinging the teacup in his hand. It crashed to the ground with a crack, smashing the incense burner to pieces. But it was too late, the smoke spread at lightning speed, and the room was airtight to begin with. I inhaled twice, feeling a little warm, but it was bearable. After all, I was a woman. This tiger and wolf medicine, designed for men, was nothing more than 2 shots of erguatu to me. But Xiao Yang was a different story. He was a man, a young, vigorous man at that. "Get out." His face changed drastically. Kicking away a girl who had leaned close, those usually cold peach blossom eyes blazed with a terrifying crimson, veins bulging on his forehead, sweat dripping down his jawline. "Get out of my sight, all of you." The girls fled in terror, screaming, their faces ashen. In an instant, only he and I remained in the room, along with the overwhelming, cloying scent that lingered in the air. 24. Your Highness. I swallowed hard, sensing impending doom. Xiao Yang's state right now was dangerous. Like a trapped beast felled by poison, he clung tightly to the edge of the table, his knuckles white, seemingly struggling with all his might to endure something, his breathing ragged, each gasp sounding like a broken bellows. "Song Xiaobao," he called my name, his voice hoarse as if filled with sand. "Come here." I didn't want to go, I wanted to run, alone together, in a brothel, with aphrodisiac smoke swirling around. This script was far too dangerous, Your Highness. "This slave will go fetch the imperial physician at once." I turned to slip away. Bang! The door slammed shut with a burst of inner strength. In the next moment, the world spun. Someone wrapped an arm around my waist from behind, and slammed me down hard onto the large tiger-skin-covered chair. Running, Xiao Yang leaned over me, his burning body like a furnace, enveloping me in an instant. His eyes were bloodshot, his sanity teetering on the brink of collapse. "Do you also find me disgusting? Do you also want to throw me to those women?" His cleanliness obsession flared up. Even under the influence of the drug, he instinctively repelled those vulgar women. At this moment, I was the only antidote here. Even if I was a eunuch. 25. Your Highness, calm down. I pressed my hands against his chest, feeling his heart pounding wildly beneath my palms, as if it would burst. "I'm a eunuch, I'm a man, I'm a rootless pickled radish." I tried to jolt him back to his senses. Xiao Yang's movements stilled. He stared at me, his gaze sliding from my eyes, to my lips, and down to my collar, which had come undone at one button in the struggle, revealing a sliver of snow-white skin. "Eunuch," he muttered, his eyes dazed yet frantic. "So what if you're a eunuch? I don't care." Boom. Something inside my head crumbled. He didn't care. He actually didn't care. He'd rather be a homosexual than let me go. "Song Xiaobao." He lowered his head, his burning lips brushing my earlobe. His tone a predatory command that brooked no refusal. "Even if it makes me a homosexual, you will be mine and mine alone." With that, he waved his hand. Rip. My poor eunuch's robe was completely ruined. 26. A chill washed over me, followed by an even more intense heat. Xiao Yang's hand slid up my waist, unimpeded, until it touched the thick, tightly bound white cloth of my chest binder. The air froze. Xiao Yang's hand stiffened. The daze in his eyes cleared half at once, as if someone had hit the pause button. "What is this?" His voice was hoarse, a hint of confusion in it. His fingers hooked around the layers of white cloth, and he tugged gently. A chest binder relied on tight lacing to hold its shape. Once the tension broke, what had been suppressed naturally sprang free. It wasn't large, but at this close distance, that feel, that curve, anyone who wasn't blind or a fool would know exactly what it was. Xiao Yang froze completely. He stared at me, his pupils trembling violently, as if he'd seen a ghost or a miracle. "So, Xiaobao," he prodded it tentatively, once more. "Soft, not pectoral muscles. Absolutely not pectoral muscles." 27. "You lied to me." 3 words, spat out through gritted teeth, seething with rage. The confusion in Xiao Yang's eyes vanished, replaced by the unbridled fury of a man betrayed, and beneath it, an even more frantic, consuming ecstasy. The ecstasy of finding salvation in despair. You're a woman, his voice shook. Whether from anger or excitement, I couldn't tell. I huddled in the chair, clutching my chest, ready to die. Now that the cat was out of the bag, there was no point in pretending anymore. Yes, I threw in the towel. This slave, this maidservant is a woman. The radish was fake, the eunuch was fake. Only the crime of deceiving the emperor is real. Your Highness, kill me or cut me to pieces, just make it quick. I closed my eyes, waiting for the storm to break, yet the expected wrath never came. What fell on my lips was a fierce, blood-tasting kiss. Kill you. Xiaoyang fisted the back of my head, forcing me to submit to his plunder. He smiled a sinister smile, the corners of his eyes red as if bleeding. The drug had fully taken hold. This time, there were no more mental burdens, no moral shackles. Only raw, unbridled instinct. For the crime of deceiving the emperor, he lifted me into his arms and strode toward the inner bedchamber. I'll carve you up real nice right now, and one more thing, he growled in my ear, his voice hoarse and devastatingly sexy. Dare mention that damn radish again, and I'll make sure you can't get out of bed for 3 days. That night, the tables and stools in the Wanhua private room lay shattered on the floor. I finally learned a lesson. Some radishes shouldn't be taken out casually, and some crown princes shouldn't be provoked lightly, especially a crown prince who'd kept his virginity for over 20 years. He'd really, nearly killed me. 28. Dawn broke. I woke up, or rather, I was woken by the pain. My waist felt broken, my legs leaden, my whole body like it had been torn apart and put back together. I opened my eyes and stared at the embroidered bed curtains, only 3 words echoing in my mind: I'm doomed. Memories of the night came flooding back, the aphrodisiac smoke, the brothel, the chest binder snapping open, and that madman Xiaoyang. I turned my head. Xiaoyang lay beside me, fast asleep. The usual cold malice was gone from his face, his brows smooth, making him look almost human if you ignored the scratch marks I'd left on his neck, and his hand clamped tight around my waist like a wolf guarding its prey. 29. Run. That was the first thought that flashed through my mind. I had to run. Last night had been a case of no turning back, of being blinded by hormones. Now that I was sober, everything was different. I was a fake eunuch guilty of deceiving the emperor. Even if Xiaoyang had said he didn't care last night, what do men's words in bed count for? Nothing more than hot air. What if he woke up, remembered being tricked by a eunuch for so long, and even sleeping with one? What if his shame and anger drove him to silence me forever? My family's injustice hadn't been avenged yet. I couldn't die in a brothel bed. I took a deep breath and carefully pried his hand off my waist. It was heavy, but I slipped out of his arms like an eel. I got out of bed and fumbled for clothes. My eunuch's robe from last night was nothing but tattered rags. So I wrapped myself in one of Xiaoyang's outer robes, which dragged on the floor, but I didn't care. I grabbed the gold and silver on the table, and slipped the golden Nanmu jar into my arms too. It had been my lifeline. Even if the charade was up now, it was a memento, at least. Farewell, Xiaoyang. I'm off to wander the rivers and lakes. 30. I climbed over the Wanhua wall, ran all the way back to the East Factory supervisor's mansion, grabbed the travel documents and banknotes I'd hidden long ago, and headed straight for the city gate. Once I was out of the capital, the emperor's reach wouldn't extend to me. With my skills, I could make a living anywhere. The city gate was quiet. There were unusually many guards on duty today, the air thick with tension. I pulled my bamboo hat low and mixed in with a group of farmers leaving the city, my heart pounding like a war drum. Halt! The captain of the guards blocked my path. Lift your head. I tightened my grip on the dagger in my sleeve, ready to fight my way out, when suddenly, the sound of urgent hooves thundered from behind me, shaking the ground. Clip-clop. Clip-clop, steady, uniform, well-drilled, the black-armored guards, the crown prince's personal army. My heart sank. I was caught. 31. Whoa. The hooves skidded to a stop at the city gate, kicking up clouds of dust. Hundreds of black-armored guards spread out in an instant, sealing the gate tight. Not a fly could escape. At their head, a man rode the black steed with white hooves, clad in a black brocade robe, his collar slightly open to reveal a neck covered in scratch marks. His hair was messy. dark circles under his eyes. Clearly, he'd just woken up and hadn't had time to tidy himself. But his murderous aura was so thick, it could freeze a person 8 zhong away. Xiao Yang, he held a horsewhip in one hand, and tossed a small object up and down in the other. Golden, Nanmu wood, that was. I touched my chest instinctively. Empty. I must have dropped it in my mad dash, or he'd stolen it from me all along. Supervisor Song. Xiao Yang sat on his horse, looking down at me. A sinister smile tugging at his lips. Off so early. Where are you off to? 32. I froze in place. There was no escaping this, not with this army blocking the way. I took a deep breath, pulled off my bamboo hat, and met his gaze with a face of resigned despair. Your Highness, this slave is going to buy vegetables. Buy vegetables? Xiao Yang raised an eyebrow, tossing the jar higher and catching it again, with tens of thousands of taels in banknotes. Are you going to buy dragon meat? Me, a lame excuse, but I tried my best. Your Highness, I gritted my teeth and laid my cards on the table. Last night was an accident. This slave knows I deserve death. I won't trouble your Highness to lift a finger. I'll run far away, and swear never to appear before you again. I'll even beg for food on the streets before I utter a single word about you. Xiao Yang stared at me, his eyes cold and hot all at once. He urged his horse forward until its hooves were right in front of me, then leaned down and lifted my chin with the whip, his voice low and seething. Song Xiaobao, you sleep with the crown prince and then run. Is this what you call loyalty? 33. I was forced to tilt my head up at him, the sunlight harsh on my eyes, his features sharp and deep in the light and shadow. Then what does your Highness want? My voice shook. Kill me. Kill you. Xiao Yang chuckled. As if he'd heard the funniest joke in the world. If I kill you, who will compensate me for my innocence? Innocence? Dude, who's compensating who here? So what does your Highness mean? Xiao Yang said nothing. He suddenly tossed the golden Nanmu jar at me, and I caught it instinctively. Hold on to it, he said. You pickled this radish to trick me, so you're responsible for it for the rest of your life. He held out his hand, the same long, strong hand that had clamped down on me last night. Palm up, get on. Where? I hugged the jar, dumbfounded. Xiao Yang narrowed his eyes, his patience clearly at its limit. Back to the palace. But what identity will I return with? I asked. A eunuch, a criminal who deceived the emperor. Xiao Yang looked at me, a flicker of helplessness in his eyes, and a hint of softness, well hidden. Neither. He bent down, slipped an arm around my waist, and with a slight lift, pulled me onto the horse, pinning me tight in his arms. He pressed his lips to my ear, his voice ringing out across the entire city gate. Proclaim this to all East Factory Supervisor Wei Xiaobao died protecting his sovereign, and shall be buried with the highest imperial honors. As for this one, he lowered his head and bit my lip hard. This is my crown princess. Lost to the world for many years. Of the Song clan, 34, I froze. Crown princess, wasn't that a little too big a leap? Your Highness, I muttered. This is against the rules. Shut up. Xiao Yang squeezed the horse's flanks. The black steed neighed and galloped off, the wind whistling in my ears. Behind us, a sea of black figures knelt, their voices ringing out. Farewell to the crown prince. Farewell to the crown princess. I huddled in his arms, still clutching the pickled radish jar tight, my heart a jumble of emotions. Who would have thought, 3 months ago, I was a fake eunuch ready to sacrifice a radish to save my life. 3 months later, I was the crown princess of Great Liang, my family's injustice fully redressed, and that 3-year air-dried pickled radish, it had become the absurd, sweet token of love between me and the reigning crown prince. Song Xiaobao, Xiao Yang's voice carried on the wind. Throw that radish away when we get back. Why, it's an antique now, throw it away. I'll replace it with a real one. Xiao Yang, you bastard.